Alright, we're on the third episode here of the module deck, so I'm going to cover another one of my companion decks. So, as explained before, this deck pairs with the land base from the first video in this series. This is another companion deck. As I said before, we don't need to explain Niv each time, but I will for the sake of things here. You flip the top 10 cards. For every card that's exactly 2 colors, you put one of those cards into your hand. Now, this deck is built around Oumori the Collector. Now, for those of you who don't know, Oumori is a companion that requires each non-land card in your deck to share a type, and that includes your commander. So this deck is basically locked into all creatures. And when Oumori enters, you choose a type of card, and spells of that type get one less to cast. Obviously, this is built around creatures because Niv's a creature, and he has no other types that we can build around. This deck, in a summary, is my fun deck that I bring out to tell people, hey, I don't have any interaction in the sense of all the removal spells you saw in the other deck. This deck is a, guys, don't look to me for an answer, I'm just playing creatures. So with that in mind, let's go through some of the things here. So obviously, since we can't run the ramp package in total, we run a unique mana package here. We run Ruby, the Daring Tracker, which is a mana dork. We run a Wondertail Mentor, which is another mana dork for red-green. We run the Black Market Tycoon, which can make us a treasure each turn, and then deals 2 damage for each treasure we control. We have Lotho, which is another way to make treasure if we can have ourselves or opponents cast multiple spells. Kellen is here again, just for an extra land drop if we need him. My video thing's not straight. Then we also have Kalan, the Reclusive Painter, which enters and makes us a treasure, and can make creatures bigger depending on how much mana from treasure was spent. Then we also have Radha, the Heir to Keld, which is another essentially a mana dork. And finally we have Khalida, the Dawnhawk Prime, who gives our humans the ability to tap for coloured mana, so she herself can also tap for mana. Finally we have Cura's Follower, which can untap permanents as required. So that's our mana producing creatures. The rest of the deck is a bit all over the place, so forgive me here. So first one I'll introduce, we have a small package built around having the ring. So we have Sam, Loyal Attendant, who partners with Frodo, the Adventurous Hobbit, which can trigger, they make food and can trigger the Ring Bearer. We have the Frodo Baggins, which is a Ring Bearer trigger every time a legendary creature enters. We have Smeagol, who can steal lands based on the ring tempting us, and incidentally can also trigger the ring tempting us if a creature has died this turn. And finally we have Bilbo, who enters or leaves the ring tempts us, and whenever he does damage we also make a treasure card. So this is the pure package just to get the Ring Bearer going up on it. The Ring Bearer can also draw us cards if we can get to level 2, and deal with big creatures if we get it to level 3. I just want to touch on very quickly, we have a couple of creatures here which can goad and help us out because we've got to get through for attack damage. We have Shipwreck Singer and the Cardor, the Doom Scourge. Cardor's absolutely insane, his ability to just force everything to attack is great. The Shipwreck Singer, if we have the mana, is also really fun. I like her ability to force an opponent to attack. For example, if someone has a really powerful 1/1 creature and they don't want to lose it, you can force them to attack if they don't have any favourable attacks. Very fun little cards. One that I think gets overlooked with the introduction of goad. For card advantage, aside from Niv, we have a few things here. We have the Pond Prophet, which will enter and draw us a card. We have Baleful Strix, which is one of my favourite cards ever printed. I love the little bird, and his Death Touch blocking ability is absolutely insane. We have Ludwig, Necro Alchemist, who can draw us cards if a player other than us lost life that turn. Also, it's good to deter players from attacking us if they want to go another way. And finally we have Sitaro, the Infiltrator. He can draw us cards if no mana was meant to cast it. So there is a few little things that blink creatures here, or creatures that can enter other ways, but we'll talk about them as we come along it. So we'll talk now about our protection creatures. So we have a bunch of ways to protect our creatures. So first we have Socrates. This can basically let us fog an attack if we let an opponent draw cards. Now it's great for us to use it to just draw a few cards, but it's also good in emergency of like, oh no, we are dead to a huge Voltron commander, let's let them draw some cards and just hope we can stay alive. In addition to that, we have the very classic Safi Eric's Daughter, which basically can sack to give another creature the ability to basically regenerate from the graveyard and come back. We then have a Pippin, the Guard of the Citadel. He has the ability to tap and give a creature protection from a type of card of your choice till the end of turn. We then have Hajar, the Loyal Bodyguard, who can give all our legendary creatures indestructible. As you can tell from this board, there's a ton of legendary creatures. And finally we have Limvala, the Shield of Seagate. She has a party ability which is pretty much irrelevant, very rarely triggers, but her ability to sack and give all other creatures hexproof or indestructible until the end of turn is a lifesaver against board wipes or selective removal of our key creatures. So that's our protection package. Now we'll just talk about some of our general value creatures. So for starters, I want to touch on we have Prime Speaker Vannifar. Those who don't know, Vannifar is basically a birthing pod on a creature. We tap Vannifar, sack a creature, and then we find a creature with mana value 1 higher than what we sacrificed. Requires a lot of deck knowledge to have it, but basically this is the only way we can tutor in this deck. And there are a few key pieces, as we'll cover in a moment. But one of the big bombs we might get for this, for example, we might grab Rada Drabeg of Urborg, who is a legendary zombie that gives all of our other zombies vigilance, and if a legendary creature we control dies, we make a token copy of it, which can be very relevant, obviously, with Vannifar sacking them and stuff like that. Also good protection against board wipes. We obviously then have a few other things. The other one we might tutor for is a Winota, the Joiner of Forces, because Winota is busted. Even in this deck, you saw we have a lot of non-humans that can hit a lot of humans, and so forth. So these are kind of our 4-drop bombs. We do have one honorary mention here that doesn't really fit anywhere, but I wanted to talk about it, and that is the Soul Herder. So for those who don't know, it is a free mana card that comes in as a 1/1, and at the end of turn we can blink a creature and put a 1/1 counter on it. Well, every time a creature we control is exiled, we put a 1/1 counter on Soul Herder. Key thing here, this card can blink our Niv, obviously get us more value like that. There are other cards we'll talk about at the end of this video really quick, but yes, an honorary mention. So finally we're going to talk about the combos in this deck. Now people might be saying this is a lot of combos. Bear in mind this is an all creature deck, so apart from Vannifar we don't have any other way to tutor them. A Niv reveals so people will know that we have them. The first one I'd like to talk about is Brago, touching on our blink we were just talking about. Brago has the ability that whenever we attack we can blink any number of non-land permanents, and yeah, obviously that gives us insane value with some of our ETB creatures. The big one though to talk about is Aurelia, the War Leader. So when we attack, Aurelia untaps all creatures and gives us a second combat. This is uniquely worded, so for the first time each turn we untap all creatures. So obviously when we attack in our second combat phase, Aurelia's like, well, I did this before, it doesn't matter. The key thing here, if we have Brago blinks Aurelia, she comes back in, she has haste so she can attack again, and she'll swing in the additional combat. But Aurelia will be like, well, I left and came back, so this is my first time doing it, and it will trigger the infinite combat loop again and again and again and give us basically infinite combats. Now, with that in mind, I will touch on moving her along to our second combo here with Saheeli, the Sun's Brilliance. So, for those who don't know Saheeli, it's blue and a red. You can tap her to make a token copy of another creature, except it's an artifact and it gains haste. The way this combo works is kind of similar. Once we've attacked and triggered Aurelia's additional combat, we'll activate Saheeli. We have to have the mana to do it, obviously. Mana Dorks is the best option because Aurelia untaps them. We'll make a copy of Aurelia and legend rule it. So we have a new artifact, Legendary Aurelia. We attack, untap everything, and follow the same loop, constantly generating extra combats by using Saheeli and a bit of mana dork production to make infinite Aurelia. Well, make a new Aurelia every combat and go off like that. So there's key thing there is Aurelia. Now, you might say there has been a new card printed that we could do that with. Well, you might be thinking it's this one here, the Jolly Balloon Man. There is a key difference here, and it's right here at the end of Jolly Balloon Man. It says, activate only as a sorcery. The Aurelia loop won't work because, obviously, you're doing it mid-combat, so you can't activate the ability. However, these two cards do combo with an old favourite of mine, the Sky Hussar. So Sky Hussar has the ability that whenever it enters the battlefield, untap all creatures you control. It also has the ability to forecast, so if it's in our hand in our upkeep, we can reveal it, tap 2 white creatures we control, blue or white, sorry, and we can draw a card. Nice little addition there. But with either of these and the mana dork, or the mana required to activate their abilities, we tap, create a copy of this, make infinite hasty flying 1/1s. Now, that's the main combo of the deck, but that's not the true nature of this deck. So we incidentally have a few fillers here. So these are basically just value cards that I've put in for different options. So we'll just go over these real quick. We have Lydia Faye, she can surveil and can't be blocked. Shay Cormac, getting around Shroud and Hexproof, it's a good negotiation tactic. Abba's Mia, he basically pings every time legendary permanents enter, which in this deck is very relevant. We then have a few sacrifice outlets. We have Ilia, the Eternal Pilgrim, that can gain us life and vindicate permanents if we've gained enough life. Dina, the Soul Steeper, she can help us by gaining life, losing life. She obviously combos with a couple of these cards. Key thing is she can sack and give herself huge power boost based on the creatures. We have Gallic Teague, a bit of a hate card, but board wipes are our worst enemy here. So stopping our opponents from casting their 4 or 5 mana rafts is very relevant. We have Campbell, the Profiteering Mayor. He is absolute powerhouse, draining every time a token enters, and copying the first token an opponent makes can be really good. We have Solgurk, the Overslime. He gets bigger for each land we put into our graveyard and has the ability to, when he leaves, to buy us back our lands, fetch lands as you might say. Seraph, the Realm Eater. He gets bigger whenever a permanent an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Key thing, a lot of people forgot about this card, well, didn't forget. That includes treasure. So when opponents are attacking treasure, he's getting huge. And at the beginning of our upkeep, we take all the counters off him and exile every non-land permanent with mana value equal to or lesser than the number of counters removed. Good nuke option if we're in a bad position. Obviously that hits our board too, so it's not ideal, but it's pretty good when it works. A few more holdovers here. We have Arabella, the Abandoned Doll. Really good just to gain life, do some damage for each little creature we have. We have Chevelle, the Bane of Monsters. He's one of my all-time favourite cards. Puts bounty counters on creatures, then when they die, he draws a card and gains us life. Zatoa, the Lava-Tongued. If we descend, we basically force an opponent to lose life, sack a permanent, or discard a card. And descending is really easy when you have 10 fetch lands and a bunch of creatures which are probably going to die in attacks anyway. Then we have the Dreadhorde Butcher, an early threat which can get bigger and bigger and do some damage when it dies. We have the Grim Flayer, again an early drop that can get bigger and helps us surveil and look for other relevant cards. Delirium is pretty nearly impossible to trigger in this deck. It can be done, but yeah, it's pretty rough. And finally, Glessa the Sunchaser. First strike, Death Touch, and relevant abilities when she deals damage to a player. She's a good roadblock and a great creature to have. So So that's all of the deck apart from one tiny little element, which is my favorite element of it, and that is, this is an initiative deck. So we are running Riel the Kingpin, Stirring Bard, Passageway Seeker, the Achrome Seeker, Ravencroft Adventurer, Seasoned Dungeoneer, Vicious Battle Rager, the White Plume Adventurer, the Blood Boil Sorcerer, and the Caves of Chaos Adventurer. So we are running 10 cards that all give us the initiative when we enter. I love the initiative, and I love it in battle, and I love triggering it. All of these cards have different abilities, which you might see here. Like, for example, if someone blocks him, he loses life. The Sorcerer can goad. Dungeoneer gives protection and lets us explore. There's a lot of fun to be had here, but these all introduce the initiative, and that's one of the core things I love about this deck. And do you know why I love it about this deck? Because I'm a crafting nut, and this is one of these silly little things I made. For those of you who don't see what this is, let the camera adjust. This is the initiative board, as you can see here, with all the initiative rooms on a huge wooden dungeon slab thing that I made with wooden crafting clay. So we have books in the library, we have blood in the arena, we have little gems in the stash room, we have tombs in the catacombs, we have a little well. It's stupid, but I do love this. And just to give you a scale of this, so I'll put a magic card on top of it. That's how big this is. So it's basically, to put it in scale, it's 3 magic cards wide by basically 2.5 magic cards long. It's a big board that I plop in the middle of the table and use actual D&D models to position ourselves in when we go through it. Yep, I had too much time on my hands.